This is TK Coleman, and you're listening to Small Business Edge by Ceteris. This is the podcast where we deconstruct small business entrepreneurship through conversations with franchisees, passion-based business owners, and other experts. We learn what it takes to succeed. On this episode of the Small Business Edge podcast, I have a conversation with Steve Eddleston. After a successful career in customer support for high tech, he now owns and operates a New England territory for Planet Fitness, the leading general fitness health club chain in the USA. He owns 15 locations throughout the New England area. What I particularly loved about my discussion with Steve is that he not only shares a lot of practical wisdom about how to get started in the franchising world and how to navigate a lot of the challenges that come up along the way, but Steve has a unique ability to use the power of humor and storytelling to not only cope with challenges, but to also inspire others. And, you know, there's a saying that goes like this: the reason angels can fly is because they take themselves lightly. Steve is such a person. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He has a great ability to laugh at himself and laugh at his mistakes along the way. And that gives him an ability to learn from them like no one else. So what I love about this episode is if you're someone that's looking at starting up a small business, going into the franchising world, what you'll learn from Steve is that you don't have to know the answer to all the questions about how things are going to be okay in order to know that they'll be okay and that you have the power to make it so. Let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
And talk about what life was like for you before getting into the franchising world. Mm-hmm. You come from the tech world, is that right?
That's right. As I say, you can take the kid out the tech, but you can't take the tech out the kid.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Right.
What were you doing in the tech space?
Well, it's a fun story of itself. So I kind of realized in high school days, and for me, that puts me back in, now you'll guess how old I am. It puts me into the mid to late 60s. I figured out in the 60s, and by the way, in that time, there were no computers anywhere. There was no such thing as a computer, really. But I figured out I wanted to be a computer engineer. And I did that because there was a book in a bookstore about teach yourself computers. Now, the only computers in the 60s were in the military, the weather service, banking, those kinds of places, right? Big banks. But I said, these computer things look pretty interesting, and I think I want to be an engineer. Now, at the time, I was living in New Zealand, which had a total population of about 2.5 million people. And so I went to my high school vocational guidance counselor and I said, hey, look, I think I want to become a computer engineer. And my vocational guidance counselor was a guy by the name of Mr. Driver. And I always remember because he was the woodwork teacher at the school. And he said, are you crazy? You want to get into computers? That's like rocket science. There's only going to be like 3 computers in the whole of New Zealand. So you're never going to be able to get a job, make a living on that. I said, well, I hear you, Mr. Driver, but I think it's going to be a little bit bigger than that. So I kind of went off to university and, I asked how to get into computing. And they said, well, the only way you can do computing is you'd have to do electrical engineering. So I did a degree in electrical engineering. I built my own computer at college. So then I went to work in New Zealand for Honeywell and Digital, both big companies at the time in the 70s. Honeywell's still around. Digital grew up, became a big mini computer company. So I worked for them for 20 years, all right? And they're the company that brought me to the States. So think of, a guy like your age, I figure you're in your mid-20s. Am I pretty good? Is that fair a guess?
Not even close.
you look that young anyway.
You're very gracious. I appreciate that. You made my day.
No worries. So, okay, so imagine you in your mid-20s. you're living in a far-flung island, and the computer company you work for wants to bring you up stateside to work because this is where all the action was. So that was in 1976, and I relocated to Boston, and I started in their flying squad. I was flying around the world fixing big computer systems. And that's what got me to this country. Is I'm an immigrant of this lovely country. And married my wife. She's from Mexico because I was flying around Mexico fixing machines down there. So, I did 20 years with DEC. I then moved on to some startups in the Boston area, 2 or 3 startups. So now, you got kids, you got college bills, I'm in my mid-50s, and I'm suddenly realizing that, this is not what I want to do anymore. I've been doing it for 35 years, and I'm kind of sick and tired of it. Now, the money was good. Don't get me wrong. The money was going like this all the time. Every promotion, I was, director, vice president, that kind of thing. But the stress was going like this. You see my point there, TK? So those 2 lines were bifurcating.
The stress is accelerating at a much faster pace than the income. So you can see yourself, you're mid-50s, right? And you're going, okay, I had a meeting of the minds with my missus. I said, hey, honey, look, it's going to be real simple here. You got to give me your decision on this, because I'm thinking I want to get off the merry-go-round and walk away from a very nicely paid corporate job and go to zero income. Now, the only reason I would do that is your other alternatives. I keep working on the merry-go-round, but maybe I drop dead 3 years from now with a heart attack. So do you want the money, or would you like the guy and the money? I like the way you set that up, because my next question was going to be, what would you have done had your wife said, I don't want you to make any change? But you set that up so brilliantly that she only had one choice to make.
I could really say that right. She did have to think about it a little bit. So anyway, but she said the right thing. And so I basically walked away from a corporate, significant corporate job in my mid-50s, kids in college, and said I wanted to reinvent myself. So I kind of went. Steve,
if I can pause you right there, I want to reinvent myself. You love tech, and you got into this world because you were so intrigued by it. I mean, once upon a time, someone says, well, if you want to do this computer stuff, you got to study electrical engineering. And you didn't bat an eye. You're like, sure, okay, I'll just go grab an easy degree in electrical engineering. So this is a path that you loved. I'm curious, what was so stressful that was causing your lack of fulfillment to outpace the income?
Well, how does it sound like a 7-day-a-week job, 24 hours, where you're the customer support guy? I was running corporate support for, a big computer company. And as such, you had guys working for you, but they were all around the world fixing machines and stuff like that. But you didn't, your life was almost secondary to the job. Totally secondary to the job. So you didn't have a life. If a big machine went down, I might be at my kid's birthday party. I had to walk away from my kid's birthday party. There was no question about that.
So it wasn't the nature of the work itself. You loved what you were doing, but the amount of time it took. Yeah, it
was the balance of life.
Sure.
For so many years, I handled it well. But I was saying to myself, at this stage, I got children in college. Soon, I got my daughter's gonna get married pretty soon. I'm gonna have grandchildren. So I gotta tack the boat. I gotta head in a different direction. I've loved this all my life, but there's got to be another me somewhere just waiting to burst out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So
this is the point of your journey where you said it's time to reinvent myself. What happens next? So
now what happened next was I looked at my 2 passions in life. One was sailing, the other was running. And I said, okay, they say if you can make money at what you love, you're living the dream. You're not really working at all. So let's go sailing. So I Googled sailing businesses for sale, and I found a captain in Hawaii. I think it was Maui, who wanted to. He was retiring and he wanted to quit. And he wanted to sell his business, so he had two big catamarans. He takes tourists out, snorkeling, and sunset. Can you imagine a sunset ride in Hawaii with Jimmy Buffett music? Pretty nice thing. So I said to my wife, "Hey, we're going to move to Hawaii, and I found my dream, and it's in Hawaii. I'll be sailing these boats, and you can come along."
At this point, your wife's got to be thinking, "Man, did I make the best choice here?"
No, yeah, and I thought she did, but you and I were both 100% flat wrong. She said, "No way, Jose." She said, "I'd like to go to Hawaii, but," she said, "I don't want to live there." I said, "Why not?" She says, "Well, too far from the kids, too far from the children. Need to be near my kids and grandchildren." So she gave me a flat no on Hawaii, and that really burst my bubble. So then I went back to the drawing board. I said, "Okay, running. I like running. How do I make some money at running?" Well, I don't see myself selling shoes at a Nike store. I can't see myself owning a shoe store. That's not going to scale. I need a scalable business I can do and scale it and grow it. And I'd learned this from the computer world, because in the computer business, if you really study the computer industry, and it's still true today, IBM, EMC, the big computer names, 75% of their income, TK, is from the service and maintenance contracts. So in other words, the checks come in every year or every month based on service contracts. Who's going to if you're a big insurance company or bank, you're not going to take your contract off your computer. All the lifeblood of your business goes through that computer, right? So whatever IBM charges on the check for service, you just write the check. You with me? And you just forget about it.
I'm with you 100%. That makes perfect sense. I need it. I got to have it.
You got to have it. So I'd learned from 30 years of fixing computers, knowing that I was the lifeblood of the computer company. I said, I'd like a company that scales and where the income comes in every month, regardless of sales, through what we call annuity stream business. So I'm thinking, running, annuity stream, running, annuity stream. Oh, I got it. A gym. A gym is an annuity stream business. You sign up a member once, they send you checks every month, in the mail, whether they use your gym or not. So I said, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Let me see about a gym. So that got me looking into franchises, because I'd never been in a gym. I'd been running. Oh, quick side story, TK. I had been running for 15 years. And why had I been running, do you think? Think about it. That's the question.
Let me see here. Why had you been running for 15 years?
Did I tell you about the problem with my life? Those 2 lines.
The stress was going up, and was running helping you deal with the stress? So
for 15 years, I found running had managed the stress back down where I could handle it. But remember, I tell you, they kept bifurcating.
So this is really interesting. The solution to what you needed to do had been under your nose all that time as the very thing that was helping you cope with what you were doing.
Yeah. And because of the very thing I'd been doing to help me cope, it kind of like, it wasn't like, Steve, do you really like running? No, I need to run, right, for the stress. So I knew stress could be managed by running. And that, to me, said, holy smokes, if it worked for me, it could work for tens of thousands of other people who have jobs like I have, and they just need to get on a treadmill and run like I did. So, of course, I'd never been in a gym. I was a street runner. But I said, hey, a gym is much more comfortable. Whether rain, we live in Boston, it's rain or snow. It doesn't bother you, and you're safe. You're inside. So it was obvious to me it was going to be a gym. You see my point?
I see your point. I'm loving it. I'm loving where this is going.
Now I just have to find the ideal gym company. And so I set about a journey to discover that company. And what's interesting about the journey is I learned so much in the journey because I was not really an independent businessman. You with me? I was always an employee of a company. And I had a financial planner. His name was Art von der Lincoln out of Boston. And I told Art one day, hey, Art, you won't believe it. You've been managing all my retirement money. I'm going to quit and I'm going to open a gym. And I goes, you crazy? You were making great money. I'm putting money away for you in your 401k. What the hell are you doing? You got no income.
You're doing so well.
Yeah. What did you do? You said, called me. So I quit already. And I just know I'm going to do this. And he says, well, oh my God. He said, gyms, nobody needs a gym. I have a treadmill in my basement. He said, I work out on my treadmill. I said, well, I think there's a huge need for gyms. And he said, okay, well. He said, okay. And this was the golden moment for me. He said, okay, you're an engineer, right? I said, yes. He says, so you know how to build a spreadsheet? I said, sure do. He says, okay, build me a spreadsheet. You have 10 rows and 10 columns. And when you go about calling these franchise company up to ask about their gyms, you're going to ask these 10 questions, but you're not going to ask the 10 questions to the salesman. You're going to ask him for 10 franchisee names, and you're going to call them. And you're going to ask them the same 10 questions. And then you're going to decide if you want to get into that franchise business. And I went, oh, that's pretty clever. I like that. And so I did that. And the first franchise company, I know you're going to put this out on some kind of a podcast. So I'm not going to tell you the name of it, but I'll just say it was another concept similar to Planet Fitness. Okay.
Sure.
And I was in love with it. I wanted to do this thing. I was gonna go do it. And one of my questions was, so who's your competition? And by that I mean you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. Who's that? And 3 of the 10 franchisees mentioned Planet Fitness. So I said, who the hell is Planet Fitness? I've never heard of them. So I Googled Planet Fitness. I found them. And I researched them. I called them up. And I said, tell me about your business. Well, of course, this business was a 10x more investment on my side to go to a Planet Fitness. It was way out of my league, TK, you know.
But you had to know. Everyone's saying this is the franchise that's keeping me up at night.
I said, why is it keeping you up at night? They said, well, it's a $10 gym. They think there's a new gym. They think they're going to survive, but no gym's going to survive at $10 a month. But it is annoying because they keep losing a few members to them. So
no one's going to survive at delivering what I deliver at a less cost, huh?
Yeah, right. So of course I called Planet and I said, hey, I thought my idea was let me sneak into Planet. Let me pretend I'm interested in becoming a franchisee. Let me hear all the business secret sauce. And then I'll be able to have my my anti-gym inoculation, so I'll know what to do to avoid them coming into my market. So I studied them. I went there. I listened. And then I thought to myself, you know what? Let me try that 10 by 10 grid again. And I called 10 Planet Fitness franchisees. And I asked them all the same questions. And I asked them, who do you think your competition is? Well, we don't really think we have competition. We think our competition is time. We got to move quicker. We got to get ourselves established in the next 2 to 5 years. So we got to get moving. I said, wow, that's pretty amazing. So that was 2008, TK.
So let me get this straight. When you're talking to all of the non-Planet Fitness franchise owners, and you say, who's keeping you up at night? They say Planet Fitness.
Right.
But when you talk to the Planet Fitness franchise owners, who's keeping you up at night? They're like, no one.
No one. Just time. We got to move quickly. So, you know, that pretty much sold me, TK. And then it was just now a matter of how do I present myself so these guys would be willing to take me on, and how do I secure a territory versus one gym? Because if I'm going to grow a Planet Fitness, scale it, I got to buy multiple rights. I can't just buy one.
One of your qualms about Planet Fitness was that it was a little bit outside of your initial budget or your expected price point. How did you even get around that obstacle?
Well, that's where so that's a great question. Oh boy, you take me back. So what I did to figure that question out was I did 2 things. I went to Rhode Island, which was the area I was going to buy with Planet. I was going to buy a whole state. And I said, okay, if I'm going to do the business, TK, I need 2 things right now. One is I need a lawyer, a damn good lawyer. I need a damn good accountant. And that accountant, I'm going to interview for an accountant, and he's going to help me with the how or if this is a reasonable investment for me. So I went searching for the accountant, and I met this guy in Rhode Island, and I interviewed 4 accounting firms that day, and he was the last of the day. And all the other 3 accounting firms gave me this nice big song and dance about what they could do for me, how they could do business models, how they could analyze this and that and do my books, and it all sounded so sweet. The 4th interview was totally bizarre. This guy blows my socks, and I said, what are you talking about? So he says to me, Steve, he says, it's real simple. You tell me you want to open Planet Fitness for $10 a month. You can have thousands of members in each of these clubs. I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And you want to do 8 of these things? I said, yeah. He says, somebody's selling you some snake oil. This is a bunch of baloney. I need to dig into it and figure out the mathematics, the economics of the model, and see how it works, because I don't think this is a smart thing. I think, look at it this way. You're going to spend $1 million to open that first gym? I said, yeah. He said, figure you pay me $3,000 for the next month, and I'm going to look into it. And I'm going to show you that that was a bad investment. For $3,000, I would saved you $1 million. You and your wife would put $1 million into your 401k. You're going to give all that to Planet Fitness. It all goes up in smoke. So you're going to cost you $3,000, and I'm going to save you $1 million. How does that sound? I said, you're hired. You're hired. And he set about debunking Planet Fitness from an accounting point of view. I hooked him up with 3 or 4 CFOs of 3 or 4 other Planet Fitnesses, and they were good enough to share him the books. You know what I'm saying, TK? So he did due diligence.
Oh yeah.
He did detailed due diligence of Planet Fitness. He came back to me a month later and said, "So Steve,
this could be a documentary where an accountant sets out to disprove the hypothesis."
Yeah. He's around, by the way. If ever you want to interview him, I could hook you up with him. He's retired now, but we still talk about that story, because he talks about that story now as, he'd been an accountant for 40 years when I came along, and he'd always been right. His theories were right. He knew when I walked into that office that this was a snake oil thing, and he was going to get $3,000 from me, and he was going to prove his point. Well, he was wrong. And he admitted a month later, Steve, I was totally wrong. The books are clean. It's a great business. You got to leverage your 401k, borrow all the money you can off of yourself to go start that first gym, but only do 1 gym. I don't want you signing up for 10 gyms. Just sign up for 1 gym, and then we'll take a look at it a year from now. Well, that gym I started. No way. He worked that out to disprove this, and he came back and said, I need you to dig into your 401k. Yeah. You go borrow all that money and make it happen. Yeah, after a month. But he wouldn't let me. He didn't agree. He said, no, I'm not going to sign up for 8 gyms. It's too much, and it's too much risk. Just do 1. We'll prove out 1 gym. Then we'll go back and buy the other 7. Right. I said, Dave, you don't understand. I can't do that. He said, why not? He said, if I do 1 and it works well, if I go back to them a year later, they'll have already sold the other 7 to somebody else. If I believe in myself, I got to go buy the 8 now. You see my point?
Wait a minute. So, Steve, as I was listening to your accountant, I'm thinking to myself, that's reasonable. All he's saying is just start with 1.
Yeah.
And then, if that works out, you can get the other 7.
Yeah.
But you needed to go for broke right then and there.
Yeah, I knew it. I'd done my due diligence. I'd done my research on the brand. And I knew it was a disruptive brand, TK. So when you come up, just like Ceteris, Ceteris has a disruptive business proposition. That's why I'm here with you guys. I recognize the disruption that you're doing. I'm your customer. I love it. So Planet had created this disruptive gym environment where the business, because of its, it's so, off the wall in terms of who could believe a gym could do well at $10 a month. Planets do very well at $10 a month because we have a secret sauce and we know what we're doing. And it's not just the price, it's the value that we give to the members. And that's the Cetera story too, right? So it's a huge value prop. And I told him, I says, look, the value prop is sound. You're telling me the finances are sound. I'm going to put down the big bet on the table, not the little bet. I'm going to put everything out there. And it was
so all chips on the table.
It was 2008, TK, right as Lehman Brothers and Morgan Stanley were all going broke. I borrowed that $1 million from my fund to go set up the first gym. So, it was a bleak time. And I'll never forget, a very good friend of mine who's a big banker in Boston. I told him, I said, hey, you won't believe it. I'm opening my first business at the very worst economic time we've seen in our lives. What do you think about that? And he said, he was an optimist, right? And he said, well, Steve, think of it positively. I said, like how? He says, well, like if the business works in 2008, you've kind of worst case tested the business because we're never going to see this again in our lives. So think of it positively. If you can make it work now, it's going to go on and on and on. You'll be very successful. I said, oh, that's a nice way to think about it. Thank you.
I like that.
So I opened my first gym in the worst case scenario of the 2008 crisis. And of course, a $10 gym was actually a pretty good thing to be putting out there in a crisis when people were losing their jobs left and right, and this kind of thing. So that was the beginning. And that was gym number one. And I'm now up to 15 locations here in Rhode Island and southern Massachusetts. And it continues to do well. We'll probably be 16, 17 gyms by the end of the year. I'm also invested now in a second concept, getting into the wellness. So I've been doing fitness for 10 years. Steve 2.0 was all about fitness. So Steve 3.0 now, I'm getting into wellness and reinventing myself yet again. And I'm getting into another franchise concept, which Cetera already works with. It's called modern acupuncture. So
nice. Yes.
You've heard of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, let me ask you, how much time transpired between the opening of the second location? First
one opened in November of 2008. The second one opened in January of 2010. So about 15 months.
And what does your CPA say now? The one that told you don't do 8 at once. What does he say now?
He just says now, he says, Steve, I can't believe, how this thing is rolled. He says, I once I saw the books for the first, the second, the third, it was clear to me, you were going to be successful. You have been successful. But it's funny because even at 8, I got to 8 and I think it was, it was some other decision point where I could have kept going or I could have held my own. I think it was about 5 years ago, we had another strategic decision. He was still there. And he said, well, what if you just keep what you've got and and just tog along? I said, no, you don't get it, Dave. I got to keep building because the whole concept of fitness is going to change the nature of Rhode Island. It's going to make everybody much better. I can't just stop. If I stop at 5 gyms or something, my competition is going to come in. And those competitions that said it couldn't be done years ago, they'll step in my lunch. I can't stop now. I got to keep on the roll. I got a roll going here, man. I got to keep going. And so that was 5 or 6 years ago. He retired.
Oh, man.
We still talk, and he laughs. He just laughs like crazy. It's the one time in his career he was wrong. I proved him wrong, and I'm just an engineer.
It's got to feel good to be the guy to have proven him wrong. Steve, when I listen to your story, I see such a lighthearted spirit, such a confident demeanor. I'm curious to know, was there any point along the way where you doubted yourself and you thought, wait a minute, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am going too far.
Yeah, no, I would say plenty of times because even though I present myself lighthearted on the outside, the old machine inside keeps saying, hey, hang on, this could be wrong. So I would say every gym, TK, those first few gyms, I was paranoid, every one of them as they would open as to what was this second choice. Okay, I hit it out of the park with gym number 1. I hit a home run. I'm not going to hit this home run a second time. Come on. All right. So, how's it going to be? How long will gym number 2 take off? Well, of course, what I learned, TK, was each gym is its own thing. Even though you build a business plan and you lay out your best guesstimate and estimate of your business goals for 3 years on that gym, I found that I was literally wrong every time I guesstimate something. Sometimes I guess them too high. I think this gym's going to go 0 to 100 in a year. Steve, a year later, it's only at 30,000. What the hell's going on? You totally blew it. Another year, another gym, I'd say, oh, this one's only going to go to 50,000. It'll be it. And year 1, it goes to 75. So what you find is each child, it's like children when you have, do you have any kids, TK?
Not yet.
Not yet. But you must have brothers and sisters, I would think.
I do. I have lots of nieces and nephews.
And I'm sure they're very different than you, right? So,
yep.
Your mom and dad were the source of these kids. Same source, same chemicals went in, but they produced all these different variations, regardless of your parents' dreams, all right? And so I think that's a good analogy for business. Your best laid plans of mice and men, to use the quote, are kind of useless because they are just an idea of what could happen. They know what's going to happen. Then what happens, once you see what's happening, you can then do corrections. You can do, okay, let's do more of this, let's do more of that. And eventually all the children come along. If you treat them well, if you give them love, you give them soil, give them water, everything comes along. Life comes along. You can't stop it. It's like, right? So I just think of my 15 gyms as 15 children with different personalities. And some of them are fast out of the gate. They just go. Others a little slower. You need to give them a little bit more push, a little bit more nurturing. And others, God damn it, what's wrong with little Harry over there? Just can't get out of bed in the morning. That's going to get a big swift kick up there, where. So I think you got to get, as a businessman, you learn how to use models to think of things in different paradigms so that you don't get stressed out. By the way, my level of stress with 15 gyms is like 0.001% of what it was when I was working for the man. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have stress anymore. I don't have any stress. It's just a fun life. Yeah.
That is truly awesome. So what I love the analogy with like each of your businesses being like children. And I think this works even for the person that just owns one franchise, because even if you just have one child, you still have to kind of find a balance between recognizing that, I gave birth to this. Without me, it doesn't exist. And at the same time, it has a personality that's going to develop independently of my own intentions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And these things, eventually you hope that child will stand up on his own feet and pay his way, and then you'll be a beneficiary. The child will be able to kick back a little bit to mom and dad, take care of mom and dad when they get old. And that's why I got into this. I could see at 55 when I went off and left the other company, I could see that I could maybe retire at 65 or 70, but I wouldn't be independently wealthy. I would still be having to be pretty frugal. That's after 35 years as a computer engineer. Hello?
I hear you. Okay, so here's a question for you about the whole stress thing. Yeah. When you were working, in the tech world, one of the elements of stress, it wasn't so much the work itself. It was just like how much time and energy it took. With you owning 15 franchises, you're not sitting around sipping lattes. You are working. That's a lot of stuff to manage. So how in the world is this less stressful?
Yes and no. All right. So let's go back to the first stress situation. It wasn't just, we simplified it a little bit. There was other aspects of the stress. There was working for large companies, TK, you inevitably get involved in politics, all right? You're in a large corporate body. There are groups of people who are favoring one set of outcomes in the corporate body. There are others that favor another. If somebody gets promoted and suddenly your boss, who is a really good guy by you, but he's blown away, he's gone now because politically he didn't have the shelter, right? Now you got this complete idiot or a jerk above you that knows nothing, that's stressful because you got to try to take care of all your employees, all right, and your customers, and with a boss who doesn't have a clue, right? He's just a political animal. So can you imagine that kind of stress where you have a huge amount of debt to your customers, a huge amount of debt to your employees because you want to keep everybody okay? I had to do downsizings. I had to do all kinds of things. So stress in a corporate environment, TK, any guy you know that works for a company with more than, let's say, 500 to 1,000 employees, and he's a vice president or he's a director, he's going to be stressed out. It's a stressful job, all right? So that's
makes perfect sense.
Now come to me. Look at Steve Edelsten. So Steve now is running 15 gyms. He has 225 employees, all right? But guess what? I have 15 managers for each of those entities with somewhere between 8 and 12 employees. And then each of those managers reports to a regional manager. And I have 2 going on 3 of those right now. And then I have my daughter who was one of my first employees at the first gym. She's my VP of marketing and HR. And that's it. So I have a very lean and mean corporate model, and all my corporate functions I need: marketing, maintenance, repairs, payroll, HR. All my functions are outsourced. So we don't have any politics inside Steve Co. It's just Steve and 2 regionals and my daughter. That's it. And any of the other bodies, I mean, if we don't like the marketing company, we tell them, hey, at the end of this month, we're moving on to another marketing company. That kind of thing.
If someone's listening to this and they say, Steve, I find your attitude to be so inspiring. I want to create a stress-free culture. I want to create a winning team like you have.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? Like a new franchise owner, what advice would you give them for creating that winning team, stress-free culture?
Basically follow the model I did. Find a franchise concept you like. Really study it and get into it. Become the franchise's best customer yourself. I mean, I still run. This morning I jogged. Okay. So get in love with the product so that you become the best customer of it. Then figure out the concept, figure out the business model, and figure out how. Always be thinking, even though you got 1 child right now, always be saying, gee, what if I could do 10 children or 15 children? How would I build that company? And if you start with, because you knew I had a commitment to do 8 children, right? So I knew I had to have 8 kids around the table. It forces you, TK, into a thinking model of how am I going to scale this thing and keep the overhead down so that all the income can support the creation of new children, new gyms, versus the creation of new jobs at headquarters. What does the job at headquarters do? Nothing, compared to a new child. So I diverted, I think for any businessman, you got to think, how can you divert all your free capital and time and energy into the creation of new children / businesses versus thinking how I can build this big headquarters. Now at Steve Co. I have to have a big building with 30, 40 people working in there, a nice parking lot with all kinds of flash cars out. No. That's not a sign of success. A sign of success is how many children do you have? That's the only question.
I love it. I love it, Steve. This is fantastic.
Glad. I hope it was helpful. Yeah. That's the formula, right?
Yeah.
Commit to yourself and the franchisor to do more than 1. Hopefully you're going to do 8. Now you may be able to get away, do 1, come back and buy the other 7. But then maybe I would argue then that isn't that hard a franchise. If you're going to play with 1 and then the franchisor is going to give you a year or 2 to buy those other 7, why wouldn't the franchisor just sell the other 7 rights to somebody else the same year? You see my point?
That's an interesting thought there. That you want to you want to get in on something that's so good that you need to buy 7 or 8.
Buy ahead of time. And what does that do to your mind when you've bought those things ahead of time? It's sharpened your thinking. You're not going to take no for an answer. You're going to be much more driven than a guy who buys one. You with me?
I'm with you.
If I'm just thinking 100%. One, I mean, you and I could do that over lunch, right? If I'm thinking 8 or 10, we're going to have to sit down and really map this out, because there's a lot of things could come along and blow it up, and we gotta build dams against the invaders, the invading parties. So it really forces a whole different level of thinking. Yeah.
Steve, you sound like the kind of guy that's always pushing yourself to achieve a new level. Here's one question I like to ask my guests, and that is, what's something that you're failing at or struggling with right here, right now, that you're still, trying to figure out how to navigate?
Well, the nice thing about that question is there is something that's really tough that's been gnawing at me for probably 3 or 4 years. Because, and let's say that was from Gym 10 on, right? And the gnawing fact is Steve, what are you going to do here with this? Are you going to own it for perpetuity? Or in other words, you're not going to retire? Or are you going to sell these businesses? What are you going to do? You going to own, or are you going to sell? What are you going to do? And, obviously you struggle with that question. You go off and talk to some experts. And it's a question any successful businessman has. And the question is, when is the right time to sell? And was one gentleman who I met through the Plant Fitness System, and he's a sweetheart individual who's a warrior that got into this earlier than I did by about 3 or 4 years. So he sold eventually. And we asked him, "Hey, Joe, when did you sell? When did you realize it was the time to sell?" And he says, "All I can say to you is you'll know when it's time. You'll know when. I can't. There's no formula. There's no book to read. Here are the 5, 10 key things to take into account. It's just it's a very personal decision, and each of us knows when it's time." And I'm not saying it's my time yet, but I'm still gnawing away at it.
Yeah. Well, you knew when it was time to leave the tech world.
I did, didn't I? You saw how definitive that was. It wasn't like it wasn't a gray area. So I think that time will happen for me, but it's not yet. I'm having too much fun, as you can probably tell.
I can tell, and it's been fun talking with you. I think one of my big takeaways is if you really want to find success, you have to get your wife to step on your Hawaiian dreams first.
Exactly. Well, think of it. If she had not said no, I'd be in Hawaii right now with one sailboat or 2 sailboats, and living a different dream. I mean, that's not a bad dream. It's to me and you, it's a gorgeous dream. But I would not have achieved the level of success I have if it wasn't for my wife. To your point. So it does take a team. You got to listen to your partner, and we still laugh about it. So when we do go to Hawaii from time to time, as which we want to do, we go there just to relax now. I'm not on business there. I'm not the guy running the boat.
Steve, this has been fantastic and fun. I enjoy talking with you. I love your storytelling, and I'm confident that lots of people are going to feel the same with me as me. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, TK. It's been a lot of fun. It's been my pleasure. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Take care. For added insights and a full collection of episodes from Small Business Edge, visit ceteris.com/podcast.